Well, hello again, guys, from here inside the Stade Orange, although this will always be the Stade Velodrome to me. How can it not be? Much changed over the years, but evokes memories. Remember that wonderful classic World Cup quarter-final in 1998 and Dennis Bergkamp's goal, Holland's victory over Argentina there. England actually opened the tournament here as well against Tunisia, goals from Paul Scholes and a certain Alan Shearer. Well, Alan Shearer isn't here with Newcastle tomorrow, and how are they going to do with them? Because I think it might just be time to give Nick Voltemade a rest tomorrow. Saying that, the argument I'm going to start here and make now is that a victory tomorrow night could actually help Newcastle when it comes to the derby in 2.5 weeks' time. Why do I say that? Well, where the Newcastle go 4 days before the derby, they're out in Germany against Leverkusen, and if Eddie Howe is afforded the luxury of being able to rotate for that game, going into the game down at the Stadium of Light, I think he will want to take that opportunity, especially if Tino Livramento and Lewis Hall remain really his only two fit first choice fullbacks. Kieran Trippier, we don't know a great deal about his absence at the moment. It doesn't sound as if he's going to be back anytime soon. That removes the option of rotating at right back in the short term. At left back, we've probably seen with Dan Burn, while I thought he played well and well enough there, his form isn't as good as Lewis Hall. Lewis Hall is a specialist left back, and we saw what a difference it meant having those two players in the team. So by the time that Leverkusen game comes around, Eddie Howe will have one eye on the derby. I think he knows just how big it is. Now, why, after all that waffle, do I say this matters tomorrow night? Because if Newcastle win tomorrow here back against Marseille, it will take them on to 12 points in the Champions League. And that, mathematically, looking at it now, will be enough to ensure their place in at least the playoff rounds. Now, another win on top of that, PSV at home in January, I think that would be enough to put them potentially on the cusp of the top 8, perhaps only needing 1 point in either of away at Paris or that game in Leverkusen. But that is why I say this tomorrow night. There's all the talk coming out of the game against Manchester City at the weekend and how the biggest game of the week now is not against Marseille, it's against Everton on Saturday. Well, of course it is in terms of that result and that outcome, given they've got the points in the bank in the Champions League already. They've got hardly any on the road in the Premier League, and that's what they need to go and prove. I agree. But getting a result here tomorrow night does two things. One, it talks to that Sunderland game and just removes the pressure and the need perhaps even to take some players to Leverkusen, one or two of the bigger names they could perhaps even leave behind on Tyneside in the build-up to the Sunderland match. But also, as well, it maintains that feel-good, that momentum. What Newcastle don't want levelled at them at the moment is they've gone and beaten Manchester City, and even though the result here tomorrow isn't massively important in the context of the Champions League, another victory, another positive performance would give them the chance to maintain that feel-good. They can't be the team who are accused of winning one, losing one, drawing one. When I was coming out here today, I spoke to my desk in London and said, what ideas do we have around Newcastle? What are your thoughts from the outside looking in? And the word which came back was consistency. How were they able to do it on Saturday against Manchester City? When you actually reflect, was it that big a surprise that they went out and raised themselves for that game? How are they able to do it there, but not down at West Ham, not down at Brentford? What will they do against Everton on Saturday night? That is why coming here tomorrow still matters. Go and follow up on it now. In the Champions League, they've actually been able to do that. And this was the question I had in my mind for Eddie Howe. Are you becoming a cup team, a big game team? You've seen it, haven't you? Those big nights at St James's, they always rise to the occasion. They always perform. They invariably get the result. I haven't had a French beer yet. They always perform and they invariably get the results on the back of it. You've seen the record in the Carabao Cup in recent seasons. Those big Champions League nights again this season. They've got to go and do it and be that team more consistently. That was one of the challenges I threw back to Bruno Guimaraes in the video on Saturday night after Manchester City. And I mentioned it in some of the comments below the line as well. You know, there's a lot of love for Bruno. The manner of his performance from myself and from you guys reflecting on it, but can Bruno Guimaraes be that player down at Everton on Saturday? And now, I think carried away, Everton will take care of itself in 4 days' time. What we've got here tomorrow night in terms of team selection, we've been debating amongst ourselves there, and I don't think there's going to be as many changes as perhaps you might think there would be for some of the reasons I've spoken about at the top. Now, what does he do at fullback? I think that is the position we're all looking to now, given Lewis Hall and Tino Livramento came back in after that period out. For them to be injured, let's forecast the worst case scenario. If they played tomorrow night and they are injured, wow, that would leave Eddie Howe up into criticism. It would also leave the team exposed in the fullback areas going forward. So there must be a temptation not to play them tomorrow night. But who else is there really? If Dan Burn comes back in at left back, He'd be up against Mason Greenwood, who currently is one of the most in-form attacking players in France, if not Europe, right now. We've just spoken to Eddie Howe about him. Eddie Howe's done a lot of work in terms of preparing for this game against Marseille, and he's spoken glowingly about Mason Greenwood, about Aubameyang, who says he's as good as he ever was through the middle. So the attack from Marseille will come at the top end of the pitch. So to put Dan Burn back in at left back, given how well Lewis Hall did on Saturday night, and given how much better they look, we're being chased. Come on, we'll walk and talk. I'll take you through the Stade Velodrome. Given how much better they looked with Lewis Hall at left back and Thiaw Livramento at right back, and I said in the video on Saturday, that's not a criticism of Dan Burn and Kieran Trippier. It's just a reality of where that quartet are at in their careers and their mobility right now. So I think Eddie Howe might keep Lewis Hall at left back. What does he do at right back? Well, Emil Kraft is here with the squad. There they are, training there in the background. Emil Kraft is with the squad, but bringing Kraft back in, who perhaps struggled in his last game. He came off at half-time down at West Ham. He's had a little bit of a knock since then as well. To bring Kraft back in against that calibre of attacking player Marseille have, and they're all about pace and movement and mobility and flair, I think that would be a risk. So does he actually keep Thiaw Livramento in there? Honestly, guys, I think he might do. When we asked him that question in the press conference, that was the suspicion we walked away with as we do head into darkness here. Now, centre-half as well. Now, he's got the 4 centre-halves here. Sven Botman, who wouldn't have liked not being in the team on Saturday. Sven Botman, yeah, he doesn't like it when he's not playing, but I think that was a justified call. Not only before the match, when I saw the team sheet, I understood it, try and get out of the glare, given Sven Botman's form in the last couple has tailed off a little bit. I think that's fair to say. Malick Thiaw is arguably the first name on the team sheet out of the entire 11, never mind just the back 4 right now at the moment. We've just spoken to Malick Thiaw inside there. What a nice young man he is. So you've got Malick Thiaw then, Fabian Schär, the pair we never thought would be really put together as the 2 right-sided centre-halves, if you like, and they looked fantastic on Saturday. Might you just go with the same again, given in that position, Howe is generally about momentum, but Dan Burn comes back in now. Dan Burn was suspended on Saturday, so he's been afforded a rest. Logic would dictate Burn plays tomorrow night. By Botman not playing, logic would dictate Botman comes back in. He might just keep the same back 4, and he might just say, given that threat we've spoken about with regards to Marseille and where they are at their best, Lee Ryder on my shoulder there, he might just keep the same back 4. What does he do with goalkeeper? That is the one where he could change. Aaron Ramsdale hasn't come in for as many games as we thought so far. This one tomorrow night, he could do. We've just watched the goalkeepers warming up there. Ramsdale coming in, I think that would be fair enough. Into the midfield now, is it one of those where he rotates and almost plays a Carabao Cup type midfield? Because that midfield 3 against Manchester City with that tweak, with the Bruno going to 6 and Tonali going to 8, and Eddie Howe was asked about that again inside just now, and he said, wonderful, we're back asking questions about the midfield. And yeah, we are, because it's fascinating. It's always been fascinating. I've said to you guys many times, the midfield gets a lot of praise from beyond the region. It's one of the best. I haven't got lawn mowers, but I've got a guy clapping. It's one of the best in the midfield. And I've always said it's a little bit of a myth in theory. And on the big games on the television under the lights, it goes back to the big game team, big game players. Really, I think, by extension, is that not true? That midfield 3 doesn't do it enough for me. Well, they did. They did on Saturday. But I do think you'll break it up tomorrow night. I do think that's important as well, to keep that freshness and a little bit of energy in some of them going into the game on Saturday at Everton, which again, I won't shy away from that. It is the biggest game of the week. We'll stay in this car park. Wonderful backdrop for video, this, isn't it, guys? Actually, we'll give the idea. Bienvenue. There you go. Welcome. Now, the midfield, I think Jacob Ramsey and perhaps Joe Willock will come in, and it'll be one of Tonali and Bruno in that holding role, perhaps even Sandro Tonali, who plays in there. So that'll be the midfield. Then the other big question, again, which Nick Voltemade was asked about, it would have been good to ask Nick Voltemade, which Eddie Howe was asked about, was what do you do with Nick Voltemade? Because to be fair to him, he's going again and again. I liked what we saw from Voltemade on Saturday. That was a better team performance in terms of his connection with others. The 3 chances to miss, Eddie Howe and everybody was absolutely delighted to see Nick Voltemade missing chances. And I hope you get what I mean by that, but it might just be 1 tomorrow night, 2 take him out. And Anthony Gordon's back here now. He's with the squad, he's training out there. He was very close on Saturday, so I don't think it's one way he's coming back in and there's a risk or a danger. I think they heard more on the side of caution at the weekend, especially as he's that type of explosive player Gordon at centre forward, and I've been chatting to one of my colleagues, Liam Kennedy, there, and he watched my video from a couple of weeks ago, and he said you were right when you said that the team actually played better and at its best in terms of that functionality, probably with Gordon through the middle at centre forward at times this season. The problem was we just couldn't score any goals. Now the wingers, those, Murphy and Barnes certainly on Saturday, are back in a better place, you would seem, and it would hope. No, it would seem and you would hope. That with Gordon through the middle, could those front three not work better together? And I do like Anthony Gordon at centre forward in that I think he plays well. I just don't think he's got the goal threat that you need, and because of that, everything else falls down. But in terms of actual performance and nuisance value and working centre halves and actually getting himself in good enough positions, he missed chances at centre forward when he was playing there early in the season. Gordon through the middle is to afford Voldemort that little rest, but with an informed Barnes and perhaps even Elanga. Jacob Murphy has been carrying the little Achilles problem. Does Anthony Elanga come in on the right? He's got to come in at some point, and if Marseille are all about speed, why not try to combat speed with speed? So that might just be the 11 that runs out tomorrow night. Now, will it be enough? Again, the question comes back to, can they start stringing performances together? The last time they lost down at Brentford, last season, they then embarked on that 9-match winning run. And there's no reason why they can't go and do it again. If they can go and beat Manchester City and play the way they can, well, isn't that a crying shame if they can't follow it up at Marseille? If they can't follow it up at Everton on Saturday? Again, those serious questions will return, and rightly so. That is why in the weekend video I reserve judgment. But I do think there's just a different feel about it there. We've spent time with Eddie, we've spent time with Malick. We've even spent time with each other, and as journalists you do get a little vibe for the feel, and everybody needed that on Saturday night. It did lift that fog and that negativity and that angst that was beginning to creep into the coverage, to the club, to everything around it, really. I've spoken to quite a few people in the 72 hours since. I think there is a different feel, and that is why I think they can take this into the game tomorrow night. Marseille are a good team, very good team, real attacking threat. That is why I believe it's probably wise, and he will just stick with the back four that's combated the best striker in the world right now, Erling Haaland, on Saturday. There's your blueprint. If you're going to go into a game against another potent attacking force, just keep it the same. Don't take any chances by breaking up a winning unit there. So, yeah, guys, it's tricky now, Freddie. He is trying to strike that balance, and there's no denying, there's no doubt that the result, if you could win one of the two, if you're putting this back to the manager, he probably would choose to win at Everton on Saturday. But it's Newcastle United, got good players, go and win both of them. And that's the challenge. Listen, guys, I'm going to keep it relatively short this time, especially there's a car just rolling towards me. I'm going to get out of the way. Yeah, no problem. Right, okay. So, below the line, what team would you play? How important is the result tomorrow night in the context of the week? What would you do with centre-half? You have to bring Burnham Botman back in. What about Nick Voldemort through the middle? And on the wing as well, I can't think it's imaginable to drop Harvey Barnes out. You say drop, would be dressed up as rested, but I can't think you can take Harvey Barnes out of the team after what he did on Saturday night. Okay, guys, thank you so much for watching. Please hit like, comment, subscribe, and I'll be back from inside the Stade Velodrome tomorrow night, reflecting on what is sure to be another fascinating evening involving Newcastle United, win, lose or draw, and never anything but. Okay, guys, au revoir.